Why, hello there. Welcome back to the Agostinho Zinga show with me, your host, Agostinho Zinga, and this is episode number 405. That's 405 of the Agostinho Zinga show with me, your host, Agostinho. How's it going? How you feeling? Great, amazing. How am I? Same old, doing the best I can with the time that I have available. If it's your first time check out the show via YouTube, make sure you smash that like, hit subscribe, and of course, leave me a comment down below. And if you're listening via the podcast app, please download the show and share it with all your friends. And as per usual, support via Patreon is always more than welcome. I'm going to be releasing one bonus episode via Patreon per week, so make sure you check out and jump over there on patreon.com/Agostinho. That's patreon.com/AGOSTINHO for more information. For as little as $1 per month, you get access to my entire library of back catalogue of shows as well as the free bonus episodes. So make sure you jump on there, don't delay, get on there today. So we're here, innit? Back on the dial, doing the thing, living as the vida loca as it can be done. I've got a nice warm warm mug of tea in my hand, as you can hear for you audio listeners. So grab something nice to drink, a little nibble, and let's get right on in with the show. So I guess first things first, because my memory is fresh off of this historic defeat that Man United suffered to the hands of PSG. Yeah, man, I'm annoyed, innit? I'm annoyed. I think most United fans who watched that game have to be annoyed because we were, I wouldn't say we were in control of the game, but we had opportunity to win the game and we didn't exactly take it. And that's the most concerning, worrying part of it, right? We had an opportunity to really win. We had an opportunity to somehow grab something that you would maybe ascribe as a smash and grab and actually give ourselves the best possible chance to, number one, win, qualify from the group as champions. As much as other fans are like, oh, it's not important, I think sometimes the momentum and the also psychological aspect of knowing that you finish at the top of your pretty difficult group does a lot for a team going into the knockout stages. And it obviously would allow us the opportunity to be seeded with the teams that finish second, who by any normal circumstance will be the lesser of the better teams in that group. So it's really kind of fucked up the opportunity. Of course, we still have a chance to maybe rectify that with some combination of results. And in terms of the opposition that we were facing at the time, with PSG, obviously loads of attacking talent, there's still an opportunity and still an opportunity and still moments in the game where you feel like you're gonna get some chances playing against the PSG because they're just so open and they have attackers that don't really like defending. Basically that. So I would say we started off the game pretty poorly. I think formation wise and lineup, I've never really been the biggest Scott McTominay fan. I do think he has a place in the squad. I think he does probably add something that he probably offers something that not a lot of players in our squad can offer, in terms of his build, in terms of his tenacity, in terms of his fitness, in terms of his versatility, quote unquote. But again, I'm not really that sold on his actual ability to play with the football. I think his passing range isn't as good as it should be. I think his heading ability isn't as good as it should be considering his size. His best probably attribute is the fact that he can essentially run up and down the pitch for 90 plus minutes, and he also has a pretty decent shot on him outside the box. But in terms of playing as a double pivot in front of the back four, as he played alongside Fred, I just think it's a bit of a wasted opportunity. I'd much rather see a Matic playing that position, or Matic either partnering a Fred or a Matic playing alongside a McTominay, if that means any sense, because I think they're two very press forward, two press hungry double pivot defenders who are likely to pick up yellow cards pretty quickly in the game. And of course, that's what eventually ended up causing Fred problems going forward in the match. But regardless, that was probably the only change I would have made. I would have probably played maybe Van der Beek in his place. In terms of a player, I think the balance with Van der Beek, Fred, and Bruno Fernandes worked pretty well in the last previous games. I think you could have easily just swapped out Fred and put in a Matic and it would have worked pretty well. But again, Fred has been playing pretty well these last few games, so maybe Solskjaer wanting to keep up the consistency or the giving the momentum and let him kind of play through his form. But I would have definitely picked Dick Van der Beek in that regard. But that aside, the kind of lineup kind of picks itself for the most part. And I think quite soon at the beginning of the game, we saw the deficiencies that lie, um, that we sort of used to as United fans, right? The fact that we don't have, I wouldn't say it's because again it's hard to kind of ascribe it just as a lack of style of play, because we obviously do have a style of play. We play on a counter attack, right? But because we don't have any variety, I don't patterns of play, let's say, like in terms of how we get the ball to our strikers, there's no like thing that we do as in like, you know, give it out wide to set left back, let him charge forward, bring the ball up into the middle to Bruno Fernandes, him knocks it down. There's no like pattern. It's just about getting it to the players and then figuring it out as they carry up, as they kind of progress further up the pitch. That's what it feels like anyway from the outside looking in. So because of that, we have to just concede possession. And I've never really been a fan of that in terms of optics, right? I've never been a fan of United playing at home, regardless of who we're facing, and just conceding the possession of the ball. I think, especially with some of the better sides in Europe, if you give them the ball for the majority of the game, they're going to punish you. And I guess if that is my kind of view of the game, it shouldn't be any surprise that PSG ended up winning because they had the ball for longer periods of the game. Now, some people would argue, oh, it's not all about possession, it's about what you do on either end of the pitch. As Solskjaer mentioned in the pre-match comments, he said, oh, it doesn't matter what happens in the middle. It's about games are decided either end, right? Our keeper and, of course, their keeper. Cool, I understand that. But with us, we are more reliant on getting those chances right and finishing them and converting them, because we don't have a way of playing that is going to put the opposition side under sustained periods of pressure for a sustained period of time like other top teams do. You know, when other top teams start cranking up the pressure when they scored a goal to make it 1-1 on the 60th minute, we don't seem to have that ability to just sustain that pressure. We seem to kind of score goals still with our individual brilliance, but it's not a pressure that's being sustained through our team and how we're playing together as a team. And again, that might have to do a lot with having to play through Bruno Fernandes, because we're so reliant on him and because he gets, you know, his numbers are ridiculous playing for us at the moment. But in terms of his actual contributions in the game, if he's not able to just do what he does, he's pretty ineffective, which is kind of a bit of a unfair to say it, but it just doesn't look that effective. And maybe it's because of the position he plays, right? Because he's kind of playing that number 10 position. He doesn't really look like a number 10. He's not cute enough on the ball. He doesn't hold it well. He doesn't dribble that well, but he has a very good sort of attitude in terms of getting on the ball. He seems to always trying to take a risk going forward, which says a lot, because I did notice with McTominay a few moments. There was one particular moment where McTominay was kind of in the sort of like just outside the area. This is when we went under 10 men, and he was kind of passing the ball back and forth to Bruno Fernandes. There was a bit of space where he should have could have probably moved a bit forward up the pitch just to receive the ball in front of the box or outside the box, and he didn't. But he kept still asking for the ball. And McTominay does that often. He'll ask for the ball, hiding behind players, trying to make it look like he's looking for space, but he's not really. So I do credit a lot of I do give Bruno Fernandes a lot of credit for just being that guy who's willing to take a chance, right? Even if he fucks up, even if he misses, even if the pass doesn't go where it needs to go to. But I still think we rely on him too much at the moment, because he seems to be the only player who can play without a system, without a pattern. He seems to just be able to thrive anywhere. So he's basically maybe the player that's probably most prone to being successful outside of the level of quality of manager we have. I think the other players probably need a little bit more. That being said, still, I think this game was decided on fine margins. I think even though we went a goal behind early, we managed to score a pretty fluky deflected goal off the back of Rashford. He took a bit of a shot in the box, and giving it to Rashford was a bit of a stretch, but I guess because it was on technical and target, it went in. And I think Diallo ended up getting the deflection, and we kind of got the goal just before half time, even though we didn't probably deserve it on the balance of play. Then we started off the second half pretty slow as well. PSG controlled it for the most, I'd say, for the most of that second half. But then we had a period just after that where we sort of regained control of the game because we got the ball again and because we were able to attack. And we suddenly had two really clear-cut chances that fell to mush. I would say one clear-cut chance, the chance where Rashford basically takes it on a wing, Cavani back heels it into his path, he knocks it into the box, and then you're just expecting Martial to just finish that, right? Because he's one of our best finishers at the club, and for some reason he just skies it completely over the bar, and you just think to yourself, Jesus Christ, if Martial's missing those kind of chances, we're probably not going to win this game. And unfortunately, that is what ended up happening. And then the second chance, which I think was a far more difficult chance to finish, in my opinion, was the one where Cavani kind of chips it. Yeah, he chips the ball over the keeper, unlucky not to score. It rebounds out, and then it somehow ends up with Bruno Fernandes on the left hand side. And him again, unselfishly, I think because he wanted maybe to give Martial an option to rectify his mistake, so he kind of cut it back. I think if it was a game where it was 1-0 down, maybe Bruno would have taken that shot on the left foot, but he still does an incredibly deft flick back into the box, gives it to Martial, and this is probably a difficult chance to score because the chance gets pushed back to you. You have to kind of take in a half volley, but still, considering Marquinhos is sort of sliding out, you would assume the best option will probably be go to high, right? I would assume. I think that you get told that, when you're playing five-a-side. Whenever there's defenders kind of sliding across the goal, just aim upwards and you're going to score, innit? Again, it's harder. It's easier said than being to be done. Don't get me wrong, but he misses that chance. And when you consider what Oliver Giroud did on the other side, playing Champions League, I think Chelsea, I forgot who they played away from home, but he scored basically 4 goals. It does go basically show that this is the reason why a lot of people have doubts about Martial, because of course he considers himself he thinks he's a number 9. He really wants to be a number 9, but quite clearly he's not a number 9 in the sense of like being reliable in terms of finishing every chance, not every, but finishing those kind of chances, right? He does score the chances that he probably shouldn't score. We have to kind of beat 3 guys and bend in the top corner, but I think the bread and butter of a striker is the ability to just score those quote unquote tap-ins, and if you can't do that at this level, it's just not going to be good enough. So you can definitely understand why the Martial doubters exist. But so aside from that, which I think he has to take some blame from it, a lot of the blame also has to fall on Ole Gunnar Solskjaer for not substituting Fred, who was already on a knife edge. Fred in the first half managed to get himself in a little bit of a kerfuffle with I'm gonna say Paredes or somebody for PSG. He ends up get into a head-to-head argument and leans in and sort of kind of motions to a headbutt, right? In football, you just can't do that. If you do that in professional football, you just have to get sent off. It's just part of the laws of the game. It doesn't matter if you didn't touch the person, there was no contact, any motion towards another player's head, indicating that you want to headbutt or you want to kind of intimidate them, whatever it may be, it's going to result in a red card. In some lucky circumstances, the referee looks at the screen, comes back, checks it and says, nah, it's all right. It's not a red card, it's a yellow, which I've never seen. I've never ever seen a player imitate that they're going to go and headbutt somebody and then get a yellow. It just never happens. It's like getting a yellow card for a 2-footed tackle. It's just, even if you get the ball, you're just going to get sent off, innit? I'm sure there's occasions have happened, but for the most part, so that happens, he gets sent off. Cool. So he gets a yellow card, and then you think quite quickly that if you're a top coach, you just take off Fred. There is no excuse. I know a lot of people have been tweeting about it online. There's been a lot of debate, but there should be no debate. You just take off the player because, of course, he's sort of, I wouldn't say he's lost his head, but Fred is a very combative midfielder. He's not Matic. He doesn't intercept the balls. He doesn't flick the ball off of the midfielder or attacker's feet. He tries to engage whoever he's playing against, right? He's very tenacious. He's very kind of hungry to tackle, even considering how small and slight he is. That's what I kind of like about him, his willingness to really get stuck in. So if that's the case, you substitute that player. There is no option, there's no scenario that makes sense to leave Fred on the pitch with a yellow card in the Champions League against a PSG, right? They have players such as Neymar, Paredes, of course, Marquinhos loves a little bit of a dive, a little bit of a roller on the pitch, Di Maria's to come on, and again, Ander Herrera's a bit of a shit cunt, and then again, which kind of, crazy luck that it would have it in the second half, and Herrera ends up being the one who kind of causes Fred to get the second yellow. Mostly the fault needs to lie to Fred for having a heavy first touch, which is one of the reasons why a lot of fans have a lot of doubts about Fred as a player, because he seems to misplace the passes that he shouldn't misplace, and then he also seems to sometimes have a bit of a heavy touch when he shouldn't have one. And unfortunately, if you're playing as a deep lining midfielder, there just isn't the room available afforded to you to misplace a bit of control and then get it back without engaging somebody, because there's got attackers all around you, right? You're in a kind of a very volatile position. So of course he misplaces that miscontrols that pass into him, and then that leads into allowing Andrea to just to get in front of him. And even though Fred, if you look at the replay, he did touch the ball before Andrea got onto it, it just didn't look good optic wise. And again, I think one of the co-referees mentioned it in the commentary that more likely than not, the referee did get that decision wrong on not standing off Fred in the first half, and he most probably saw that in the second half. So he was in his head. He was already playing in the referee's head. Oh man, I fucked up. So if anything, he was going to rewrite that wrong as soon as possible. Like Fred was on his last warning. If he did any tackle that was any millisecond late, he was always going to get a second yellow. So you would really expect a top class manager to take him off. I understand it's Fred, but he's not like, it's not like Bruno, it's not Martial, it's not Cavani, right? You just take him off, right? Of course the players on the bench should be enough to deputize for him. Van der Beek, the Pogbas, they should be enough to do a good job playing in that position or rotating the team, whatever it may be. He should have come off, and the fact that he didn't come off eventually cost us the game, because let's say we concede anyway, let's say he makes that tackle or somebody makes that tackle, he gets the yellow, but we still concede, cool, but we have the option to play and to counter and to compete with 11 players on the pitch. The fact that we didn't have 11 players on the pitch ultimately led to our demise, because obviously there was space at the back, we had to overcommit players in the front, and then towards the end Neymar was able to finish off a pretty brilliant performance from him all the way around and score a pretty good goal towards the end, where he sort of, he basically sat Maguire down near the byline, ran into our area, passed the ball out to the wide, and then somehow managed to get back into the box and calmly tap into the goal. And we ended up losing 3-1. And yeah, man, fine margins in the Champions League. This is what it is. You miss your opportunities, you lose the game. It is what it is. There are no gimmies, there are no flukes in the Champions League for the most part. But there is part of me that thinks, because we don't have that style of play, because we lacking in that sort of ability to sort of engineer chances on a consistent basis, you really do need to just take those opportunities. You just can't afford to let them go, because unfortunately, if you're Martial, if you're Rashford, if you're Cavani, you're just not going to get the same chances that the players playing up front for Liverpool, Man City, even Chelsea get on a game-by-game basis. We just don't seem to create enough, and because we don't have a system of play. And if that's the case, and if you're a Solskjaer, you just have to give yourself the best opportunity to win by making sure you have the players on the pitch, you have enough players on the pitch to do that, right? So just take off Fred, like make it job easy for you, because again, we win that game, this conversation completely is different, because we lost. And now we've put all the pressure on this game that we've got against RB Leipzig towards the last game of the group. It's just unnecessary pressure, really. So that was unfortunate, isn't it? But I don't know, man. It's a really hard one, because I think most fans know that Ole Solskjaer isn't the guy, right? He's just not the top level coach that you need for United to really progress. And I think most people, if they take off their rose-tinted colours glasses, know that to be true. But unfortunately, at the moment, unfortunately, at the moment, he seems to still be able to get a tune out of these players. But there also is a thing where these players also seem to never really step up when it needs to be stepped up, right? They just always seem to miss it. They always seem to come up a little bit short. And again, some of it might be to the manager lack of system, but it's also the players just not taking enough ownership. Like the Fred yellow card, like who was on the team that didn't just tell him to calm down when he comes out of second half, kept talking to him, look, relax, don't go, like just allow the first 15-20 minutes of the second half to go without you even maybe making a tackle or making a contentious one. Just play calm. No one in their team did that. And again, they kind of abdicate responsibility, and they sort of always lay the blame on the manager. And I think, again, the manager isn't good, don't get me wrong, he's not the best manager for us. He may be the best manager for this moment, but in terms of our long-term ambitions, he's not the guy. We just know it, right, deep down in our loins, no matter how much people with the numbers try and tell you different and try and make out seem as if like flipping Pochettino's Tony Pulis, whatever. Let's not get involved in other managers. Let's say he's not the guy long term, but still, these players should be doing better, right? They should be doing better, right? We're playing PSG, we're not playing Bayern Munich. Like, this isn't a game where you should be losing 3-1 at home like this. Like, it's just a bit embarrassing, really. But what can you do in it? What can you do? But yeah, let's move on that one, because talking about football sometimes depresses me. We do have some good news though. On COVID-19 news, we finally got some good news and the news we've all basically wanted. Especially in the UK, we've been confirmed as the first place, I think, in the Western world to judge the vaccine to be safe. The one that's been developed by Pfizer and BioNTech, I guess the German company. And it's welcome news, man. Welcome news for all people. I think most of us have probably gotten to the point of lockdown fatigue, COVID-19 fatigue in general. I know we have as a country. People are just not really abiding by the rules. Everyone's sort of doing what they want to do. I looked at, it's a good example of it though. That Rita Ora story where she went and had her Christmas party, her birthday party, sorry, for her 30th or something, right? And then she came out with an apology after the fact, saying how sorry she was and she should do better, blah blah. Reading that apology and seeing the effort that they went to put that party together, because I think she mentioned that it was like a surprise birthday party, but she, was all glammed up to the nines, people bringing balloons and shit. That party was planned to some extent. So if that's the case, most of us would be led to, it'd be safe to assume that she was probably gonna have that party regardless, and already had her apology drafted prior to putting on the party. So if that's the case, if Rita Ora, who I would consider to be a bit of a square, right, a bit of a square, not the most rock starish of pop stars that exist out there, and if she's having, the thinking, or is at this point where she's like, what, I'm gonna have my birthday party, I don't care. If she's doing it, then for sure we've all kind of reached our point of sort of like being able to not give anymore, especially after this recent lockdown that's happening now and the inclusion of the tiers. It's just becoming a little bit too much to really deal with day to day. So it looks like, again, most people's assumption that life would only return with the vaccine has been proven right, especially in the Western world. We just aren't compliant enough as a country or as people to abide by the rules as they're set out, especially when our people in leadership are not abiding by them themselves. The numbers don't seem to go down, and loads of misinformation and all this other blah shit. So I think the vaccine is probably the best possible route out of this. Of course it's the best possible route out of this, but for us, especially in the West, this is the only way we're going to get back to any sort of normality. We weren't going to beat the virus the same way they did in New Zealand or in Vietnam and other places like that. So anyway, this is an article from the BBC. It said COVID-19 Pfizer BioNTech vaccine judged safe for use in UK. So it says the UK has become the first country in the world to approve the Pfizer and BioNTech coronavirus vaccine. Britain's medicines regulator, the MHRA, says the jab, which offers up to 95% protection against COVID-19 illness, is safe to be rolled out. The first doses are already on their way to the UK, with 800,000 due in the coming days, said Pfizer. Health Secretary Matt Hancock said the NHS will contact people about the jabs. The elderly people in care homes and the care home staff will be placed at the top of the priority list, which makes complete sense, followed by the over 80s and the healthcare staff. But because hospitals are already at the facilities to store the vaccine at 70 degrees Celsius, as required, the first vaccinations are likely to take place there for care staff, NHS staff and patients. A further 648 deaths within 28 days of a positive COVID-19 test were recorded in the UK on Wednesday, with another 16,170 cases reported. Again, we're being so numb to these numbers now, and we hear these numbers being bounded around, and it just, man, it's so distressing, man. Hopefully when all this comes to an end, there's a way to commemorate the memory of all the people, that passed during this time, because God almighty, man, I'm sure once the dust settles, the amount of families that have been broken, that have been destroyed through this period, of lockdown and having to suffer living life amongst, with COVID in and amongst us, is going to be very, very profound. So hopefully there's something put in place to honor some of the people who are unable to hold on until a vaccine was kind of, approved. It continues here. Prime Minister Boris Johnson urged the police not to get carried away with the over-optimism, police, without the over-optimism or failing into a naive belief that the struggle is over. He told Downing Street News Conference that while the searchlights of science had created a working vaccine, significant logistical challenges remained. Of course, the Pfizer-BioNTech jab is the fastest vaccine to go from concept to reality, taking 10 months to follow the same steps normally span 10 years, which leads me to believe the people responsible for this will probably be up for a Nobel Peace Prize or something along those kind of lines, because that is absolutely insane. That is definitely an illustration of the rate of innovation nowadays compared to back then, right? 10 months to 10 years is absolutely unreal. It continues here. The UK has already ordered 40 million doses of the jab, enough to vaccinate 20 million people. The doses will be rolled out as quickly as they can, made by Pfizer. In Belgium, as Hancock said, with the first load next week and then several millions throughout December. So by next week already, there'll be a first couple of people who already got the vaccine. How mad would that going to be, man? That is so cool, especially again for industries such as mine that I'm interested in, with hospitality, nightlife, bars, dance music, culture, nightclubs in general. This is the only way they're going to be able to function, and they're going to be able to make some kind of income the next year. Because again, I would assume not all places will be able to operate to 100% capacity, but just having the ability to put on some events on, to have some money coming through sponsorship and marketing and advertising is definitely going to help. So yes, for that one, yay, yay, yay. Scottish First Minister Nicola Sturgeon said the first people in Scotland will be immunised on Tuesday. Awesome. Welsh Health Sexual Care Minister Vaughan Getting said the rollout of the Pfizer jab to care homes would be practically difficult because it's how it ends up to be stored. Mr. Getting said it was not impossible. So it's not possible to transport the Pfizer vaccine to more than 1,000 care homes across Wales. The bulk of the rollout across the UK will be next year, Ms. Hancock said, adding 2020 has been awful and 2021 is going to get better. So yeah, so loads of really good news on that one. Of course, they kind of broke down how it's actually going to be applied, the phases, of course, mostly to people that are vulnerable. And then you've got some more information down here about how the doses are going to be spread out. So 2 doses, one day one, and then by the day 21 you get your second jab, and then from 28 you'll be having full immunity. So there's still a lot of work to do prior to this, but in general, just in terms of us returning to some level of normality, allowing people to kind of get back to work, quote unquote, allowing people to reopen their businesses, you know, put their kids back into school without really feeling that worried, visit obviously vulnerable family members, industries, whatever it may be, is going to be really, really interesting to see this happening and getting rolled out, of course, within the next few weeks, and of course leading into a new year. And it's a perfect way to sort of end this sort of really ridiculous year in general anyway. We needed some bit of good news, some glimmer of hope, some light down the end of the tunnel just to hold us forth, because I was of the assumption that if there's no vaccine, for sure most places are going to get into another, you know, you're seeing what's happening in the States, right? I think the States for the most part, you know, yeah, America for the most part, with the exception of some states, most people aren't necessarily taking the virus that seriously, and you've seen the consequences, right? Places are going into, you know, not other state are going into like second rounds of lockdown, sometimes third, and there's definitely a prospect with the states where they'll have a scenario where for the most of the new year they'll be under some sort of lockdown again, right? Especially in the densely populated places like New York and stuff. But with the vaccine on the horizon, it sort of allows them to return to some level of normality. Of course, in the interim, I'm sure, unfortunately, they're probably still going to lose some lives, but just having that option is going to be good, especially again for places like America, that the people, the population haven't been the most cooperative, it looks like, for in terms of agreeing what to do when it comes to dealing with COVID. But again, for people in the UK, good news ahead. Again, we still have to remain vigilant, still have to do all the common sense things to make sure we don't, you know, spread the virus unnecessarily or put ourselves at risk and all that malarkey. So yeah, good to see, good to hear, and I cannot wait for this shit to be finally over. I cannot wait, trust me. Over it, mate. I'm bloody over it. Anyway, moving on here, we have quite a funny story actually, concerning COVID and what people are bound to do. I think I mentioned it previously on yesterday's show about this whole debate that's going on at the moment about having substantial meals when you're out drinking, and the whole idea from the government side of things, I guess, is to limit the amount of times, or is to limit how long people stay out drinking. I guess if you add a meal, it just sort of slows down people's pace of getting smashed, and of course it also reduces the amount of people that can be in a bar at one time. I get it, it makes sense. But in terms of what's going on at the moment, there's loads of places that are essentially trying to get around it by seeing if they can offer the least amount to basically it be deemed as a substantial meal. And then one place, a legendary club called Gay in They've got one, I think, in Essex, and one, of course, I've gone to here in Soho, which is kind of well known for putting on some really amazing drag nights and whatever it may be, and just being really a good place to go to in Soho for kind of really cheap booze and a good time to dance out and stuff. Has decided to kind of use their innovative minds and get around the whole substantial meal by this headline. So GAY announces it will serve McDonald's to get around the new COVID rules, and the gays are loving it. So I said here, London GAY at Heaven is to serve as food from McDonald's in order to comply with the COVID-19 regulations. And naturally, the news has come as a set of extra large memes. With England's Tier 2 regulations requiring pubs and bars to serve substantial meal in order for reopen after lockdown, some venues are being forced to think outside the box, right? Because not all places are going to be offering food. So among them is GAY Heaven, and the owner Jeremy Joseph announcing that the famed haunt will partner with McDonald's in order to resume its regular scheduled Saturday night activities on December the 5th, which is amazing. Again, he probably shouldn't be speaking so openly about this, but it's just amazing how he's able to sort of like figure this one out. He said the announcement divided the internet, with some commending GAY for its creativity. Of course, as a person that's obviously taking a piss, and we've got an image here of Charlie XCX holding up what looks to be a popper and saying me fighting the toy at the bottom of my gay Happy Meal, which is funny. And then you've got this other image of what looks like Princess Diana. Said me collecting my McDonald's at GAY entry, which is funny, smiling. And you've got another meme here of you had to buy McDonald's to get into GAY or else it was illegal. And some kid saying, sure, grandma, let's get you to bed. So yeah, owner Jeremy Joseph has been vocal critical of the government's handling of the hospitality industry. In October, Jeremy Joseph launched a legal challenge against Boris Johnson's temporary curfew, arguing that the rule will put many out of business. However, in a statement 28th October, Joseph said the court had refused the case, and he vowed to continue fighting it. So he's got a bit of history, you know, in terms of fighting his corner. But again, it's cool to see these venues deciding to kind of think out the box to kind of get around these draconian rules that are kind of put in place to quell, it seems, the virus, but also they kind of inadvertently essentially affected a huge portion of the industry and people's. Because I remember I read somewhere, I forgot where it was, where it was like argued that up to 60% or something of the UK's workforce are people who work in the service industry, supposedly. I'm sure that's what I read. And if that's the case, man, the government's kind of, you know, refusal to sort of work with them and sort of offer a solution in terms of how to get them kind of up and running when it comes to, you know, operating under COVID rules has been really bad and sad to watch, really, from the outside looking in, man. So great to see there is some hope down the end of the line. And of course, you know, with the vaccine coming up very soon, we're gonna hopefully get some of that coming up very soon. What else do we have here? Oh man, we have this, and of course I'm assuming most people have seen or are familiar with this whole fight card that happened over the weekend. Of course, the main event was Mike Tyson versus what's his name, Roy Jones Jr. And of course on the undercard we had Jake Paul facing Nate Robinson. Nate Robinson, I'm not really familiar with. I'm assuming he's like an ex-basketball player, NBA player, judging by some of the memes and the banter that was coming out from some of his ex-colleagues and professionals. I'm assuming they'll say ex as well. And he got knocked out pretty bad, man. Like it didn't really end well for for the guy Nate Robinson. And I guess we shouldn't be that surprised, right? Considering that, I think, from what I've learned during lockdown, I've learned a few things, right? I've learned that people seem to argue a lot on Twitter, right? There's a lot of toxic sort of communication that seems to occur on Twitter. No one's really civil or want to have interesting conversations. Everyone's sort of really just trying to go for it on Twitter and kind of fuck each other over by saying the most meanest of things. And the other thing I've also learned watching a lot of MMA over the lockdown period is that there are definitely levels to fighting, right? You see one person fighting and they're absolutely dominating their opponent, doing what they want with them, you know, bending to them to their will, sort of imposing their will on them in the ring or in the octagon. And the first thing that you kind of understand from it is the levels. And then again, you see that person facing somebody else and they get completely ragdolled, right? So you're seeing that, wow, if this person beat that guy and that guy's really good, but then he faces this guy and he just looks like an absolute bum, that must mean there's levels to this shit. So when I saw this being announced and I saw like a former, you know, dunk winner, facing against Jake Paul, who I guess is a YouTuber, but he has a lot of experience, being in the ring, fighting and putting his body on the line and all this sort of stuff against somebody that hasn't done it ever. It was always going to be a recipe for disaster. And again, this is coming from my own very limited experience fighting, right? I did a little Groupon Muay Thai class, right, back in the day, maybe a couple of years ago. Again, being a fan of MMA, being a fan of martial arts and whatever. And the first thing that I noticed quite quickly was like how it sort of, the parallels between fighting and football, like sports I play, right? Like I've been playing football for the majority of my life, right? For the sport I've played the most, right? This replay that I'm watching him just running at forward to flipping Jake Paul. I played football for the longest period of time, so I would assume even my kind of low level of playing football is probably better than somebody that just starts playing football now at the age of, I don't know, 25, right? They're never going to be as good as me, right? Because I've got my base, right? And I'd assume fighting is the same, but for some reason I don't know why it is. Maybe because it's a life and death thing, everyone seems to have this really warped way of looking at it, where they always think that they have the ability to beat someone who can fight just because they have hands and feet. Like that seems to be really odd, isn't it? Because again, like I mentioned, if you've played football, like if you're 25 and you play football from the ages of 2 until 23 even, and then somebody tries to start playing football at 21 years old, they're never ever going to be as good as you, even if you're not that good, because you've just been doing it longer. But for some reason we think just because you just start training 6 months ago, that this guy must have been even less than that, that you're suddenly now going to beat somebody up who's been fighting in some way, shape or form all their life, right? Because I think Jake Paul's got experience in wrestling, of course. So his brother, they've won a lot of championships in their area and all that good stuff. So for him to suggest and think that he's going to suddenly get to a level where he can compete with somebody like that is just insane. And what we saw with this fight, which I'm kind of seeing on the background highlights here watching, was that this Nate Robinson guy was completely disorientated the once he got hit. He had never been hit before, and I think I remember maybe Khabib Nurmagomedov said it once when I think he was talking to the Nelk boys, right? I think he said it like that, where I think they were kind of bantering and asking him, "Oh, do you want to beat this guy? How old are you?" Right? The first thing he asks is age, and the reason why he was asking that is because from what I've read between the lines, there's only a certain amount of skills that you can learn the older you get, right? There's limited, of course, to your age and your ability to remember the skills, but it's more so about your ability to kind of withstand, to kind of withstand damage. That sort of flinching motion thing that you do when you're older is very difficult to, it's easier to kind of get that out of you and to allow you to kind of be a bit fearless. It's sort of like, I kind of equate it maybe to like being able to do tricks downstairs on a skateboard, right? It's probably easier if you start doing it when you're younger because you've got less fear at that age. But to try and, do a big flip down a 25 set stairs is just going to be difficult at the age of 29. You can probably do it physically because nothing's impossible, right? But in terms of being easier to do, it's probably easier to do when you're younger. So I'd assume that's what happened to Nate Robinson. He just hasn't been hit enough in the head or punched in the body or kind of tied up when you're kind of in a clench. He just hasn't done enough of that day to day for it to make sense and for him to know what to do under those bright lights. Because, you hear Mayweather said it all the time, under these bright lights, everything changes, right? Imagine the fighters that kind of fight against Floyd Mayweather, right? They're already seasoned professionals. They're really, really top level fighters. And even those guys suffer when they get under the bright lights and they have all the skills. And imagine if you're Nate, you don't have the skills, you fight against somebody and instantly if you haven't been, like most people, have you been in a fight? I've been in a couple of street fights, right? Maybe a couple that I've lost, whatever. But for the most part, when you're involved in a street fight, you know pretty quickly when you're fighting somebody whether or not you're going to win or not. You know very quickly, oh shit, this guy's strong, this guy knows how to fight. You clock it quite soon, right? Just from what they do, how they move, you're like, oh shit, I'm going to be in for a long day. So to be Nate Robinson and to have that happen when you're fighting in this ring against someone else on this sort of platform, knowing it's being streamed around the world and many people are watching you, it's just, I feel really bad for him, especially considering how the knockout occurred. Now again, in terms of skill level, he shouldn't have been in that ring. He was leading with his chin. He was not, everything he learned in camp went out the window. All those drills that he did were completely of no use, especially when you're in the ring. As soon as you get hit in the head, that Mike Tyson quote, right? Everyone knows what to do. Everyone's got an answer or something until you get punched in the face, right? That is definitely true, and you saw it here in this replay here I'm watching on the on my screen. He sort of leads in, literally, which is similar to what you'd see in a street fight. You'd see this quite often in the street fight. You see somebody sort of like leading in with their face, with their arms down below, hoping to sort of swing upwards. But when you're a fighter, you sort of obviously move, I guess, with your hips and with your feet, and you're kind of pivoting backwards. And that's essentially what Jake Paul does. Nothing that really too advanced. He kind of leans back and just boom, overhand right, which is kind of the classic sort of, knockout button, right, to back of the head, back of the ear. It sort of complete lights out, disorientates you a bit, and legitimately, look, he lost everything. His body went a bit limp. He didn't just fall down on the floor for tiredness. He went a bit limp. Like, as soon as he got hit down a button, his body kind of went a bit limp and he fell down the ground already. That's the first sort of knockdown. And then of course he gets another one here later on, but he's just not a good enough fighter to be fighting somebody of Jake Paul's level in a boxing ring. It just doesn't make any sense. He gets tied up a few times, and then of course he suffers a really, really embarrassing knockout. Because again, mostly because of his lack of skill, not because he got knocked out. Anyone can get knocked out. I think the fact that he got in the ring should be commended, but the fact that he gets in the ring and then gets knocked out with a punch that you could have probably seen coming if you had some level of training, and also a punch that he could have avoided if he didn't go in the way that he went in, right? Boom, he kind of walks into the punch effectively the same way he did in the first round. Hands down, overhand right again to the back of the head, and that way it's completely lights out. No, it's twice. One more actually. This is not even the one. He gets this another. So he gets knocked out. He gets knocked down 3 times with the same punch, basically, right? Jake Paul kind of bops his head, and again, I imagine if you'd fighting somebody better, they'd always notice that Jake Paul does that thing where he sort of closes his eye and launches with the overhand right, and you'd obviously be waiting with an uppercut or something, I would assume. So he doesn't have that ability to sort of recalibrate, and of course by then he's completely gone, doesn't know what he's doing. And then here comes a poster card moment, and he does it again the third time. Actually, it's even worse watching this back, man. At the time it was bad, but it's even worse watching this back. And then again leads him with his chin, and then Jake Paul doesn't even move that well. Like, look where his feet are, Jake Paul, right? Where his hips are in general, right? It's not even that good of a punch, like, and he just completely flatlines a guy, man. He just eats the entire canvas. Bang, poster card moment, bum in the air, and that spawns the meme, the Nate Robinson challenge. So that's all well and good, the deal with that one. And again, I don't really know why everyone's sort of like dancing on his grave, so to speak, when it comes to being Nate Robinson. Maybe because he's not that well regarded outside of basketball, maybe because he said some really wild stuff when he was preparing for the fight. But it got so bad that even the baby supposedly, it actually happened, hangs out with Jake Paul's article here, hangs out with Jake Paul and does a Nate Robinson challenge, which is everyone's been doing this thing where they essentially lie prone on the floor, and that's the Nate Robinson challenge, and the baby even done it, right? Which is incredibly embarrassing. And then of course you've got this video here from Twitter where somebody uploaded loads of images of people doing it all across Instagram and taking part in this Nate Robinson challenge, lying on the floor, lying on the floor face down. It's sad, man. Again, like, I understand, man, like, getting in the ring is really scary. Trust me, I've done a month's worth of I've done a month's worth of Groupon classes, right? It's a scary thing getting in the ring, especially with somebody who actually knows how to fight. It's all well and good having the adrenaline to do it on the street and bumping into somebody in a supermarket and feeling like a bad boy, but to get in a ring or to have a sparring match with anybody with any kind of skill takes a lot of balls. Yes, he got a lot of money. I think he got like $500,000 or something, right? $500,000 to do the fight. But I don't think there's no amount of money that's going to be enough to allow you to be that embarrassed, right? So of course that's the sad part of it, that sort of kind of ended it. But Jesus Christ, man, like, these YouTube fights are hilarious. I want to hopefully see Jake obviously fight somebody with a little bit more skill. I think that would make it far more interesting. I think that's what made the whole like Logan Paul and KSI thing a lot more interesting as a spectacle to kind of watch, because they were both sort of like on the same sort of level in terms of skill. It made it a very intriguing fight, of course, because of their backstory and the feuds that they have online and the fact that they don't like each other, blah blah blah. But in terms of skill level, that's what you kind of want to see. You don't really want to see somebody who can fight and doesn't know how to fight, because then it just turns into those weird Russian fight video things that you see online and stuff, right? Where we saw it recently, that guy that weighs like 400 pounds fighting some, you know, mixed martial arts professional, right? Even if she's semi-professional, the fact that they put, I don't know, they've managed to make it a spectacle, but the woman's always going to win. Doesn't matter if the guy's 500 pounds. If he can't fight, it's no use his size. So that was quite disappointing to see. And of course, to put the cherry on top of the cake, we have this article here that says from Bro Bible. It says you can now buy weed in bags featuring a picture of the unconscious Nate Robinson if you want to get KO'd in a more enjoyable way. Like, again, I would love to know, some of my American fans, like, what is the deal with Nate Robinson? Why are people going so hard on him, like, for losing? I guess I know the knockout was bad, but why are people really laughing and gleefully kind of mocking his inability to fight in a boxing ring? Like, what's the deal? Was he just not a likable guy? Is it because he just didn't beat the guy everyone hates? Like, what is the deal? Let me know, man. Why are people going in on Nate Robinson so hard? This is absolutely insane, man. Someone with a video of the packaging, obviously playing I Want to Knock You Out by, what is it, Public Enemy? Look at that, loads of packets of weed with Nate Robinson's face completely flatlined on the canvas out there. Again, unfair. Oh, there's a picture here, of course, of Jake Paul kind of posing with his jersey after the fact, but Jesus Christ, people are brutal on the internet. And I guess, you know, he's gonna have to ride this one out. I think if he would have won I think he has to accept it, right? Because if he would have won, he would have been gloating, he would have been all over the place, he would have been getting interviewed at every radio station, he would have been partying too, the same way that Jake Paul's partying. So you can't really, you know, you can't be too angry at people dancing on your grave at the moment. But I'd love to know why people seem to be extra happy that he lost. Is, you know, I'd love to know the backstory behind that. But again, hopefully he's all right. I think he is. He made a statement recently saying, hey, I'm cool. So Nate Robinson, get well soon. You know, these things happen. You tried to get in a ring, it didn't work out. What can you do? Next on the list, we have a very, very cool and awesome, well-needed initiative here being spearheaded by Cera Khin. I pronounce her name Cera Khin. Is it Cera Khin or Cera Khin? Cera Khin, Cera Khin. Anyway, well, it doesn't matter. Cera Khin, of course, has had a bit of a rough, she had a rough start of the year. You know, I think most people did on social media, especially some of the techno DJs in Berlin, especially because Berlin seemed to be the only place, I think, in Western Europe that had some clubs open, right? They had the ability to throw some open air parties here and there, which obviously allowed them the opportunity to put on some nights. And because most places are, I'd assume most places in Berlin are kind of adapt or are kind of in a position to put on open air parties, right? So they were in a position to kind of take advantage of the regulations at that time of the year. And then of course some of the neighboring countries, Spain, Italy and stuff as well, were open, so that allowed them to travel a little bit easier. Some of the people in Berlin of course have a bit bigger profile. There's some of the DJs, they already have gigs and connections and so it just allowed them to kind of maneuver and kind of, you know, get gigs and go and perform at a more kind of consistent basis than maybe some of their other counterparts who might live in other places. And again, generally as well, because the scene's a little bit clicky and whatever it may be, people just tend to, you know, we're just looking for an excuse to maybe throw some sticks and stones. And, you know, she seemed to bear a lot of the brunt of it. Most of it I think was unfair, as I mentioned in a couple other videos. I just think it was just an unfair, and it was unfair, of course, some of the stick, and it was also just bad timing. You know, we're just going through a pandemic. People are not doing the thing that they love, the thing that comes, you know, as a calling, the thing that they've worked many years to kind of progress and get to the top at. And then you're seeing somebody, you know, this little girl playing behind a deck somewhere, you know, flying to Spain, go to Italy, going to France. It's gonna do something to you, right? It's gonna make you get a little bit angry and tweet out some mean things. So people are looking for any reason, cussing her t-shirt, doing this or whatever. It just got a little bit crazy. But in general, I think now that things have sort of died down and sort of settled, what you are seeing that is generally, I feel as if, especially being a fan of nightlife, especially being a person that participates in the culture, being a promoter, being a DJ myself, there's definitely been a lot of struggle in terms of mental health, having to deal with the reality that we're living in now, where we've sort of all kind of accepted, all ravers have sort of accepted, all promoters, all DJs, all event organizers, all agencies have sort of basically accepted that we're not going to return to our hallowed turf of, you know, sweating our asses off somewhere in a dingy basement bar, in a dingy warehouse somewhere, in an open field festival until there's a vaccine. We're just not going to be able to do that. We just know in terms of the regulations around, it's just kind of hard to kind of accept that sort of new reality. So there are a lot of issues that people are suffering with, you know. And again, most people people, you know, like most jobs, are living paycheck to paycheck. I think anyone that thinks anything but that is obviously being naive. No matter how much you're getting paid, you're still going to probably be your habits are probably still going to align with the money that comes into your account. And when that is completely cut off, it does really kind of mess with your head, because you've basically done nothing for that to happen. It's not really your fault. You've not done anything. It's not like you're not going to a studio. It's not like you're not turning up to your gigs. It's not like you're not being professional. It's something outside of your control that's effectively taking away your ability to make any kind of income, and you don't see any kind of way forward. So I'm assuming, again, imagine if you have pre-existing conditions, it's definitely going to mess with your head. So there's definitely been a lot of, I guess, more understanding now in the kind of towards the end of the year, with people deciding to go and play some of these quote unquote play graves, than there was in the beginning. But of course, there's still an issue at hand, right? There's still a lot of people in the industry that are suffering mentally, that are suffering physiologically, they're suffering, of course, financially. We've lost a couple of people here in the UK, which looks, you know, for the most part, it does look like some of these people already had, you know, pre-existing conditions, but I'm sure a lot of their untimely passing wasn't helped by their inability to basically do the thing that they've only known to do, right? It's a part of their identity, exactly who they are. So for that to be taken away from them, it's a lot to deal with. And luckily, Cera Khin has put together this really cool initiative called Mental Health Awareness. I think she's got a little Instagram page up as well called Techno Mental Health, where she kind of provides a platform for people to basically talk about the issues that are quote unquote, I guess, taboo in the industry, and to really be open about the struggles that they're having. And this is a video where she sort of outlines a bit of it. Let me play a bit of it for you, and then you can carry on.
Hi everyone, I'm Cera Khin. I'm a DJ, a producer, and I'm really happy to share that I've been recently certified as a hypnotherapist.
Awesome.
I've been always fascinated by how complex the human mind is, and besides music, I've been all the time reading books and investigating and trying to understand the subconscious mind. And I know with all what's happening this year, especially with the pandemic,
she got that one cheeky leg out. See that? Very cheeky.
we've been all struggling mentally, and we mostly felt anxious and unsafe and uncertain about the future. And yeah, and I think it's pretty normal to feel this way. We don't have to pretend that everything is okay. And then I recently had this urge to create this Instagram page, not Facebook page, called Techno Mental Health, and to basically raise awareness and share some different topics and ideas and subjects about many ways how to improve our mental health on a daily basis. Please, you should always know that your mental health is as important as your body, and if you feel like down, or you feel like you have like difficult thoughts or emotions, or you feel depressed, please do not be ashamed and be brave to seek professional help. Always remember that you're really not alone in this. Yeah, I think we are like in 2020, you know, and I feel like it's about time to talk about mental health out loud. And we've been quiet for so long, and we have to break the stigma, and yeah, and basically normalize it. Yeah, that's what I want to say for today. Thank you guys for watching this video, and I really miss you, and I hope to see you soon on the dance floor.
So a pretty cool initiative, isn't it? Like, it's all pretty self-explanatory. Check it out. The page I'll get here on the screen. Techno Mental Health, all one word, supporting mental health awareness and personal growth in the techno community. Get rid of that. Let's get rid of that little pop-up for annoying. That always comes up. I don't know why all these little pop-ups come up. But yeah, going back to her thing. So let's go on the first square here. It says how to break free from worry loops. How to break out of your chronic worry loop, acknowledgement of your worries and get them out of your head by writing them down in your journal. Be present, learn to pause and take a deep breath on a daily basis. Point 3, stop worrying about things you can't control. Point 4, if the worry is not solvable, get the work get to work on a plan of action. And point 5, move your body, stretch, dance, or go for a walk. And 6, read a book and take a break from social media. So again, some really, really actionable steps that you can obviously take. Loads of really cool information. I'm assuming over time they'll build up a little bit of a community in the comments in terms of talking about things and really being open with certain, topics and whatever they may be. And of course, with Cera Khin's hypnotherapy certification, I'm sure that's definitely an avenue that people can definitely explore in that regard as well. But it's definitely welcomed, right? It's definitely something that needs to be spoken about in open, because I'm sure there must be something, because there should be no coincidence that there are people who sort of are, I wouldn't say predetermined. I guess there is definitely something to be said for people who are attracted to nightlife, right? Because like myself, I know I'm a bit of a weirdo. I know I'm not the most normal person in the world. I know I have my little interesting quirks and tics or whatever they may be, and just general odd personality traits. But there definitely is something about people like you and I who prefer the company of people in the nighttime than in the daytime, who prefer to be, lost in the dance, lost in the sound somewhere of some dingy warehouse party somewhere, listening to some DJ you never heard play 135 BPM techno. There's definitely something about that makes you predisposed to some of these conditions, especially if you're under the influence, right? That's definitely not going to help things. But just imagine all of that, and then just imagine the ability, not having the ability to go to these places that are essentially a safe haven. Because a lot of people have said that. I've seen a lot of people in the comments talking about how much, let's forget mentioning that they miss going to see a certain DJ player, go to a certain club. They just miss the community, the camaraderie, yeah, that exists within the techno space. And a lot of it is stuff that you just kind of take for granted, right? The techno subreddit, people that might sell your ticket on Instagram, people that might sell your ticket on Twitter, the comments on a certain blog page, the comments on someone's Instagram profile, the waiting in the queue, the going to buy a beer at Spatty or so, whatever it may be. All these things kind of contribute to your general way of life and your general pattern that you kind of go through when you're going to these club nights. And sometimes there's less even to do with the actual final place. It's just about all the little what do you call them, procedures or rituals that you kind of go through prior. So imagine that being completely taken away and there being no option for you to do that in the long term. Of course, now we're in a better position. There's a vaccine on the way, especially in the UK. There's definitely a light at the end of the tunnel, but that's a long time to go without something that is integral in your life, in your kind of week to week sort of existence. So to have the space to be able to speak about these kind of things, and to maybe evolve, and to maybe think to kind of change the way you kind of approach your clubbing, is definitely something I think is going to be an interesting thing to see happening in the next iteration or whatever this scene is going to be. Because I'm hopeful, this is again, it's a hope that this time that we've had away from the dance floor has definitely changed us for the better. I think we've lost a few establishments, some good, some bad, and we've lost a few people, and we've lost a few agencies, like labels and whatever there may be during this period of time. People have changed their names and whatever it may be. I hope it's not all lip service. I hope there is definitely going to be some meaningful change, and we're definitely going to see people approach how they go out and how they commute and how they kind of navigate the nightlife scene in a different way. And if it's kind of results in you having to kind of offer up a different solution, making your own club, setting your own night up, cool. If it makes you offering your own agency, cool. If it's you offering his own platform in terms of speaking openly about mental health issues in the scene, cool. But whatever it is, I hope we approach things differently going forward. I hope we just don't go back to normal. I'm optimistic that it changes. Of course, my pessimistic side tells me that human beings just revert back to type. As soon as we kind of are allowed to go back to normal, we'll just do exactly what we did prior. But I'm hopeful that this time away, it's just been too long. It's been more than 10 months, especially heading into a new year. There's bound to be some kind of change, and hopefully that change is long lasting. But again, check out Techno Mental Health, all one word. It's definitely on there. Definitely make sure you follow it and interact with that content if it's something that you feel is going to contribute to your life. Cool. Next on the list, we have some very distressing news actually for myself, because I'm a big fan of his. I kind of followed his journey, and I just love a good sort of like comeback story. I don't know why. It's just something that I've always kind of resonated with. But it looks like, unfortunately, this comeback story has been cut short. Or it's kind of taken a bit of a detour. Unfortunately, according to the New York Post, over a dozen gang members are indicted for killing a teen and other crimes. And one of the people that they're looking for in terms of, making sure that he gets arrested and charged with the crimes he's been convicted with is Casanova, a rapper that's obviously represented by Rock Nation, and somebody that I've kind of been a fan of since he kind of popped up on the scene a few years ago. Very aggressive street rap, probably not the best stuff to listen to if you want to serenade your lady friend or fella, whatever it may be. But in terms of getting me amped to go to the gym, to do a workout, to bust through my last mile run, and just generally to kind of get me feeling like I'm 10 feet tall, Casanova was definitely one of my go-tos. Prior it was 6ix9ine, but of course his music level quality, forget the snitching stuff, he's just level of quality, his music just kind of declined as soon as that snitching stuff happened, because most of the people with the talent that were actually allowing him to make, that were actually helping him make the songs and write the raps, were obviously all indicted in that massive case. But Casanova definitely filled that void for me, and it's sad to kind of see that it kind of is going to end in this way. So New York Post says the following here: more than a dozen members of the untouchable guerrilla Stone Nation gang, mad name, were indicted on a range of serious raps, including for the slaying of a teen boy, federal authorities announced on Tuesday. The quote: the violence and the drug activity committed by these gang members threatened the safety of our communities and placed innocent lives at risk, said FBI Assistant Director William F. Sweeney Jr. But thanks to the partnership and the hard work of all the enforcement agencies involved in the investigation, we were able to stop this violent criminal organization and show that the Guerrilla Stone is actually not untouchable. God almighty. Brandon Soto, aka Stacks, and an unnamed co-conspirator allegedly murdered a 15-year-old boy in Poughkeepsie to further the interests of the gang, according to an indictment unsealed in White Plains Federal Court, which definitely makes you think that most likely, because again, from what I've read and from the things I keep up to date with in terms of, the criminal underworld, from the books and the documentaries, most of the times, unfortunately for some of these federal investigators, they don't really get anywhere until people snitch or flip on their co-conspirators. It's just the way it is. It's just very difficult to kind of pin crimes on criminals who have kind of dedicated their life to crime, right? They are kind of good at evading capture, so the only way to kind of pin them is to get other people in the gang to snitch on them in exchange for a lighter sentence. So that's what it looks like if they're able to kind of pin this directly on said individuals, unless of course they have really stonewall proof. But usually if the feds come after you in the US under some sort of RICO charge or whatever it may be, or federal charge, they're usually coming after you with a dossier and a complete file on you, already signed, sealed and delivered. There are no buts and if buts or maybes. And it continues here. It says the other charged members face counts of ranging from attempted murder and racketeering to assault. The allegations include a gang shootout in New Rochelle, the gunpoint robbery of a drug dealer in Peekskill, and the face slashing of a rival in Manhattan. 2 defendants are charged with filing of fraudulent applications to score COVID-19 unemployment benefits, court papers allege, which has definitely been a thing I've seen a lot in the US. It seems like I guess it makes sense, I guess, during COVID times, because the requirements or whatever it may be in the checks, whatever, are sort of relaxed in some way, shape or form to allow people to apply for loans and whatever it may be to support themselves and their businesses during these hard times. So criminals are obviously using an opportunity, because criminals, that's how they operate. Whenever they see a weakness, when they see an opportunity to kind of get involved, they will do so and exploit. They have done so, and you've seen a lot of this. You've seen a lot of people kind of getting pulled up on these COVID-19 employment benefit scams, which has been interesting to see. The Guerrilla Stone gang allegedly sold crack and cocaine and marijuana in the Bronx, Manhattan, Brooklyn and Worcester, and used shocking acts of violence to advance their interests, according to indictment. 17 of the 18 charged are in custody, officials said, and of course the one that they're waiting to get charged or looking to capture is Casanova, aka Casanova, is on the run at the moment. So people are alleging he's in various places, who knows, but it's just a shame, man. Because again, I'm still a big fan of his, a girl horse, but I still remember that interview I think he did with Breakfast Club or someone where they said something along the lines of like, oh, somebody at Rock Nation, I forgot who it was, kind of pulled him to a side and basically said, hey, if you fuck this up again, you get arrested, it's over. Like, this is your one and only chance to make it out of the hood and be a rapper and be a rap star. Like, don't fuck this chance up, because if you go to prison again, you're not going to get a second chance or third, whatever it may be in a music thing, and that's going to essentially going to result in you having to live a life of crime to keep you above your head above water. And I think some people in the comments, because again, I'm naive to these things, I listen to the music, I don't really pay much attention to the Instagram shit, but some people in the comments have been saying lately that they've kind of been thinking he's been moving a little bit too reckless. He's obviously been flaunting some of his wares too much and just acting too much like a gangster online, which is always a bit of a sign that people are definitely not, that is a sign that somebody hasn't separated themselves from the streets in a way that you would be conducive to be a artist, it seems like, for the most part. And if people have noticed that, regular just civilians on social media, I'm sure the police have probably been noticing that too, if they've been surveilling him outside of the things he's been posting on social media. So again, it's sad to see as a fan. I guess you're hoping this is a misunderstanding and they somehow come to some sort of resolution, but if they're after him at the moment and he's one of the 18 people being charged, it's definitely serious, and it's definitely something that is probably going to affect his long-term ability, his long-term freedom, and it's probably going to result in the end of his rapping career. But I guess, what can you do in it? What can you do? I wonder if it's a consequence of COVID, this as well. Maybe it's a consequence of COVID. No shows, no anything. He probably doesn't make that much money off of streaming his music online. He probably made the bulk of his money doing appearances and stuff in clubs in New York. New York has been one of the worst places with lockdown. They've been really tight with it. Cuomo hasn't been fucking around. He's been locking down everything. So you would assume he's probably a little bit of a local actor as well. He doesn't really travel that well. Maybe that his majority of his income is definitely coming through being able to do shows live and perform anywhere. So having that kind of cut off was definitely going to make you maybe start doing things that you probably wouldn't have done outside of COVID times. Again, no excuse, but I wonder if that's one of the reasons behind it, because it doesn't make any sense. He's on Rock Nation. He goes to the Rock Nation brunches. He's in all the right rooms. Again, that doesn't equal money in the bank, I'm sure. But in terms of where you're going, your trajectory, like, it kind of, we all know how much being friends with certain people helps, right? Your network definitely helps your ability to make a success of your career or whatever you're doing. So to be in the position that he's in and to essentially fuck it up for what, like, long term, especially because I'm sure this money is holding him down for the moment, if allegedly what he done is true. It's holding him down for the moment and keeping a roof above his head, but in terms of his long-term ability to support his family and just have freedom, it's definitely going to be impacted off the back of this. But again, hoping it's not true and hoping it's just a misunderstanding, but from what I've seen online so far, it doesn't look like that's the case. And if that didn't get any worse, we now have a different story about G Herbo. G Herbo has now been wrapped up as well in another case. It looks like the feds in the US are just not fucking around. So this is an article here from the Chicago Tribune. It says designer puppies, private jets. Oh, Jesus Christus, why is it always doing that? Why is it always doing that? Why is it always doing, where is it? There you go. Anyway, start that again. So G Herbo is getting hammed up as well. So it says designer puppies, private jets, and a Jamaican villa. Chicago rappers charged in Massachusetts with elaborate fraud scheme. Mad, isn't it? Everyone's doing fraud, isn't it? Scammers all over the place. It's a Chicago drill rapper. G Herbo grew up on the south side of Chicago in an area dubbed Terror Town, a far cry from the world of private jets, tropical villas, and designer puppies. His youth, as described in his blunt lyrics, was spent dodging bullets and hanging out in the violent streets near the 79th Street and Essex Avenue. But as his star rose with collaboration with the likes of Nicki Minaj, Chief Keef, and the money rolled in, G Herbo's real name is Herbert Wright III, said he started to realize it was time to move from his past and embrace his newfound fame. He said, honestly, I'm just trying to capitalize and build other people up. Wright told the Tribune in an interview last year. I'm a firm believer in that life is what you make it. I've been broke so many times. I was supposed to be dead. I was supposed to be in jail, but I'm still here. Now Wright, 25, finds himself in new difficulties. He has been named in a federal fraud case brought in Massachusetts, alleging he, his music promoter, and other members of his crew used stolen identification to charge more than $1 million worth of exotic services over a 4-year period, which is wild, right? Like, it doesn't seem like he actually needs to do this. This is like not even living money. This is just like extra expenses that he doesn't want to put through on his own, and he doesn't want to charge himself to, and he's just charging other people's cards. It's just madness. um Among the ill-gotten gains were trips on the private jets, limousine rides, exotic car rentals, vacations at a villa in Jamaica, and even 2 designer puppies purchased for Wright from a dealer in Michigan in 2017, according to the indictment filed under the seal of the U.S. District Court in Springfield, Massachusetts in September and made public on Wednesday. That is insane. So they've been tracking this guy. I don't say, are they looking at a 4-year period of tracking, or are they saying the investigation's spanning that? I don't know if they've been tracking him, whatever. Like, the feds do not fuck around in the States, man. This is insane, and also so unnecessary for G Herbo. This all just looks like, again, just extraness that he's doing in order to kind of prop up his image on social media, because all these things are ill-gotten gains that are definitely going to look good on social, right? Private jets, limousine rides, exotic car rentals, vacations, designer puppies. These are all things you're just going to floss online with. And again, it definitely reinforces the notion that you should never believe everything you see on social, because you honestly don't know what anyone's doing. Now, most of it is an image thing, and we understand it's all entertainment, but there are some kids out there who naively enough believe that their favorite rapper, who doesn't get any plays or spins on Spotify, doesn't really go on tour as much, doesn't sell out arenas, is somehow being able to afford themselves constant rides on private jets, not knowing that maybe the record label has a deal with a private jet company that allows a certain amount of them to take flights on the thing, not knowing that maybe the limousine or the cars that they're driving aren't theirs and they're rentals, not knowing the jewelry is rented, not knowing that all this stuff is just a facade to kind of bolster their image. Because I remember do you remember that there was an article about some company in the States, I don't know where it was, maybe somewhere else in the world, where they essentially had a prop set that made it look like you were in a private jet. It was sort of like a cut-off airplane that you kind of sit down in and pose with pictures and make it seem like you're on a private jet. Do you remember that thing? That's an actual real thing. So I'm sure there are places that you can actually go into a real airplane on a real runway and also make it look like you're on a private jet flying somewhere. So all these things you see online, never get miffed by, never get fooled by them, because for the most part, it's all an image thing. In G Herbo's case, it looks like it was just a pure image thing. He didn't need to do that at all, because he's an artist on a level that he probably could afford these things outside of his own pocket, but he looks like he just didn't want to spend the money. Again, I'm just assuming. Who knows? Maybe he's hurting. I don't know. Because again, you'd imagine someone of his level of stardom wouldn't resort to scamming still if they didn't actually need it, right? So I don't know. Who knows? Also charging alleged scheme were Antonio T. Glow Strong, Wright's promoter and manager, Southside rapper Joe Rodeo, and Joseph Joe Rodeo Williams, and the alleged conspirators Steve Hayes Jr., Demorius Sorrellis, and Terrence Bender, all of Chicago. So again, all people that he's probably grown up with, which makes it even more stonewall and probably correct that this is happening. Man, G Herbo, what's we doing, God? 14 count indictment charges all defendants with conspiracy to commit wire fraud and aggravated identity theft. Strong is also charged with wire fraud, and court records show that is insane. Strong was arrested by federal authorities in Chicago December 25th. The records show that he appeared for a removal hearing before a U.S. judge, Robert Dow, who ordered him to be brought to Massachusetts in custody and U.S. Marshals to face the charges there. In his ruling, Dow wrote that Strong was alleged to be the ringleader of a 1.5 million fraud that includes the use of aliases and other people's identities. He says these are red flags for the opportunity to flee. Dow said Strong says that he would not do that, and his parents were willing to take him in, but who is to say that in the middle of the night, when the gravity of the cases sink in and maybe the weight of the evidence, he would not decide to flee. Williams meanwhile turned himself into authorities in Chicago on November 24th. Williams is G Herbo, right? I'm just assuming that. G Herbo, is that his Williams or is that Herbo? Where is he? Oh, right. Okay, that's right. Sorry, G Herbo's name is right. Williams is the other guy. Let's continue here. Williams meanwhile turned himself in. On Chicago November 24th, Judge Beth Jantz granted his request for bond so he could travel on his own to Boston, court records show. It was unclear whether Wright or the other two defendants had made arrangements to surrender or agree to a European court of their own. Reached by telephone, Wright's attorney James Lawson had no comment on Wednesday. Lawyers for the other defendants were not yet listed in the court documents. The indictment comes as Wright's fame continued to skyrocket early this week. Herbo was named in Forbes 30 under 30 musicians list. He posted news of 6 million followers on Monday saying, "Never pay attention to accolades, can't start now and I can't stop now." Wright also recently performed his hit PTSD with Chance the Rapper on Tonight Show Jimmy Fallon. According to indictment, a scheme centered on the defendant's use of stolen credit card information and personal identities obtained from, guess what, the dark web, of course. God almighty. The defendants had text or used social media to share the stolen information on the fly, and at times, even as members were in the process of charging the credit cards and goods, they referred to the stolen information in coded messages as cards, moves, or joints, according to the charges. In November 2017, Strong, also using the name Darren Geiger and identifying himself as Wright's manager, called an unidentified pet company in Michigan to order 2 designer puppies for Wright using stolen credit cards, according to the charges. Jesus Christ. The pet company appeared to be suspicious and asked for Wright to confirm the order by messaging it directly to Instagram account. And indictment alleged Strong allegedly sent a text to Wright saying, "Harry just messaged that bitch, hello." Oh man, they've even got him on his Instagram DMs, mate. The indictment alleged that Wright did what he was told. The company representative messaged Wright back on Instagram asking, "You're getting 2 puppies correct?" Wright then confirmed the order according to the judges. The crew also used stolen credit cards to charge a week's stay at a villa in Jamaica in July 2017 at Wright's request. According to the indictment, another trip in Sunny Isles, Florida, a year before was also illegally, and along with the personal chef and private security. Now, for sure, these trips in Jamaica, they've definitely got evidence of them, right? There's no way someone like a Herbo went to Jamaica in July of 2017, right? Summer, sun, and didn't take any IG videos or pictures and stuff. It's impossible. Oh God. In March 2017, Strong used the alias Richard O'Malley to book a private jet for Wright and an entourage of 8 others from Chicago to Miami, where Sorrellis and an unnamed co-conspirator had used different stolen identity cards to rent luxury cars for the crew, including a Bentley CGTC and a Maybach S600, according to indictment. The charges allege Wright and his crew were also illegally charged trips to Miami, Texas, New York, New Jersey, and California. They don't really go that far in it. It's all like statewide trips. Do you really need to charge people's credit cards for the private jets to fly to fucking New Jersey? Some of these people, man, like, God almighty. The most recent allegations of fraud occurred on September. Not that it should be justified to steal anyone's deal with for nothing, but it's not even that adventurous, the stuff they're doing. It's just regular rapper stuff, isn't it? You can't just do it with your own bread. Mamma mia. The most recent allegations of fraud occurred on September the 4th when a co-conspirator used fake information to pay for a set of rooms at the downtown Chicago hotel where Strong and others stayed, according to the charges. In addition to the federal case, Strong is also facing pending federal charges brought in Georgia 2019 records show. God almighty, he's so fucked. Wright, meanwhile, has a criminal record in Chicago that includes a 2018 traffic stop where he was allegedly observed by police placing a handgun loaded with a 31 armor-piercing bullets in the seat pocket of in front of him. Court records show Wright was charged with felony aggravated unlawful use of weapon by 2019, prosecutors dropped the case as Wright pleaded guilty to a misdemeanor weapons charge and was given 2 years probation. So yeah, it's looking peak for Herbo in it. Basically, it looks like it's a wrap with him at the moment. So yeah, rappers, probably be on your P's and Q's, mind your shoulders, stop using people's deets to get private jets, and just use your own money and, you know, live within your means, I guess, isn't it? Because God almighty, what a crappy way to end the year for Chicago people, in it, right? Got obviously the death of King Vaughn, and then you have Herbo being incarcerated. Mamma mia, or potentially anyway. We don't know how it's going to end, but it doesn't look like it's going to end well. Anyway, talking about endings, let's get into the last little clip that I wanted to show you concerning news I've seen. So, most of you are aware that Kevin Hart's got a new special at the moment, right? It's called something Rod on the West Coast. It's a new special Kevin Hart has got on Netflix. Doesn't really matter. He did it in his home. It's quite an innovative way he did it, in terms of making sure it's COVID safe. And he kind of came out in his nightgown with some Jordans on, some pajamas, sorry, and Jordans on. It's a really clever approach. And the whole idea behind it was that, oh, I'm gonna give it to you raw, unfiltered, uncut. Whenever you hear someone saying that, it's never gonna be raw and unfiltered, uncut. And unfortunately, if you're Kevin Hart, you just can't do that. The level of celebrity and the level of star he is at the moment, and the space that he occupies, he's just unable to be the comedian that he probably wants to be in his head. You just can't do it. So whatever stand-up he thought he was going to achieve on that stage just didn't basically resonate with myself. I just didn't like it too much. Again, I'm not really one of those people that says Kevin Hart isn't funny, point blank, because I think he's probably one of our best comedic actors out at the moment. White or black, doesn't matter. He's really very much up there. You have to see some interviews that he does alongside of The Rock, filming Jumanji, how funny he is. Just generally on his Instagram, he's definitely a funny and humorous dude. The movies, of course, that he does, definitely usually funny and humorous dude. Sitting alongside on a podcast show that he does with the other Red Cup boys and other people in these kind of organization. He's just generally a funny guy. There's no way you cannot say he's not funny. But in terms of stand-up, and in terms of him emulating or following in the steps of people like David Chappelle and Chris Rock, these sort of people that he sort of looks up to, he's just not going to be able to deliver on that level, because he's too polished, I guess. That's probably the negative side of it. And he's very aware of who he is as a kind of celebrity and the position that he occupies, and he's very careful to say certain things, carry himself in a certain way. But he also has this weird proclivity to be very sensitive, which is not weird because you're an artist, right? You're going to be sensitive with your work, but he's overly sensitive considering what he is as a comedian, and considering how famous and rich he is. Because he must know, right? Kevin Hart must know that he's never ever gonna be Patrice O'Neal, right? But he's gonna die one of the richest people, one of the most famous people in comedy of all time, right? It's gonna be hard for somebody even to reach the levels of fame that he has, and box office hits, all that malarkey. So if that's happened, you're gonna have to, I would assume, being a celebrity or being an artist or at that level, you would have to come to a compromise and be willing to say, okay, I'm gonna give up one thing in order to get the other thing, because you just can't have it all. It's really hard, and I would say somewhat impossible, to be super rich, super famous, super well known in all the big kind of Hollywood movies, and also be an edgy comic or edgy or whatever, or a comic that sort of everyone sort of loves on the underground. That kind of like appeal, it just doesn't happen. I'm assuming if Dave Chappelle did a few more comedic movies that were shit, he would definitely lose that luster of being like the well-regarded stand-up comedian. You kind of have to give up one thing. You can't just have it all. And I think Kevin Hart is trying to have it all, and it makes sense because as a person, he's very motivated, very driven. He's always trying to get everything that he wants, right? Drive and motivation and work hard. And he has a tendency to keep doing his work hard thing, which I guess Bert Kreischer mentioned on the Two Bears One Cave podcast, where he essentially said that kind of working hard mantra gets on his nerves, because I guess if you're a Bert Kreischer, and myself included, kind of coming from my side of artistry, working within the nightlife scene, being a DJ, working as a promoter and doing all that kind of stuff, it's very what you realize in the arts, for the most part, there's no linear path to success. Everyone's got a different route, right? But it does require some lucky breaks to get where you want to get to in the arts, right? Because for the most part, the bar of entry is pretty low. Anyone can get involved, so there's a lot of competition. So with the fact there's a lot of competition, you're going to just take longer to get there. And there's going to be people, of course, exploiting you along the way, blah 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 blah. But there is a lot of luck involved in you getting the thing that you want to get at the end of the rainbow, right? You being able to have a successful career, make money, support your family. There's a lot of luck that goes into it. Yes, of course, it's your decision to go out, do shows, do guest spots, go do open mics, whatever it may be, do shows for free, blah 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 blah. But along the way, you're definitely going to need some lucky breaks. You're going to need a good network of people around you to get to the next level. It's just what it is. And I think most people that are mature understand that. There are some people that are a bit naive and are a bit bitter and like, oh, how come he and she got there and I'm not there and I'm better than him, like with jokes, whatever. Yeah, you might be better than him or her with jokes, but you just haven't got the network. You didn't have the lucky breaks that allowed you to make that next step. And unless you recognize that, you're just never going to make that next step. But for Kevin Hart, he's obviously had those over his career, but he doesn't seem to recognize that those are probably as important or maybe more important than his work ethic. The fact that he gets up and does push-ups and runs doesn't necessarily mean anything if you aren't able to capitalize on the opportunity, right? To star in a movie, to be a good guest on this show, whatever it may be, whatever break that he got along his career probably impacted his overall ability to be the person that he is now, more so than his ability just to kind of work hard and train. And Bert Kreischer mentions it here in 4 on the podcast of Two Bears One Cave, and I'm going to play the clip for you here, and I'm going to comment on the other side.
I'm not a joke. Is this premise about Kevin Hart where I don't want to fuck him, but I was saying, I'm tired of people saying they work hard. Like, I'm tired of hard work being why you're successful.
Oh, right.
It just drives me nuts because I've worked hard my whole life, but I was unsuccessful at periods of time.
Yeah.
And I was like, but I'm busting my ass. And there are people that work hard that aren't successful. And I just was like, I've been trying to a bit, and I guess I went off on this one time, and I was like, fuck hard work or whatever. I don't know. And I was like, talk about the times. I don't know. My point is, Kevin Hart's new special is awesome. I love Kevin Hart.
So you can definitely understand why Bert Kreischer or people would say something like that, right? Because I think he's probably more cognitive and more self-aware than most comedians within that LA comedy scene, even though he can kind of rub people up the wrong way. And again, he's not my cup of tea at all times. I sort of kind of, dip in and dip out with the content that he puts out there. I think he's probably at his best sitting alongside Tom, sitting alongside Bert, sitting alongside Bill Burr, sorry. They sort of balance off his sort of like, he's sort of a frat boyness, like whatever he does better, right? I guess on his own he's a little bit too much to kind of deal with, but in general I like him because he's really self-aware in the idea that how he kind of understands the kind of role that the whole taking of the t-shirt has played in his career. He also understands the role that telling of the machine story has played in his career, and he's also very aware of the role that him being friends with Joe Rogan and Tom Segura and all his people has played in actually his career, and the fact that where he is at the moment, he speaks very openly about, the troubles that he had with the Travel Channel and getting fired from that, and what he did second and going up, and these are all things that are probably contributed more so to his career than his actual ability to write jokes, to go to shows, to do weekends away from home, to do triple runs. Like that is the thing, that is the base level entry thing that everyone should be able to do. Now the only thing that I disagree with Bert Kreischer is I'd say I don't think everyone works hard. I think that message of like working hard that you get from like Jocko Willink, David Goggins is quite important, because most people don't work hard. People think they work hard, but they don't really work hard, especially for their dreams, because it comes naturally. So the idea that you'd want to work extra hard to achieve your dreams doesn't necessarily come easy to you, because it's something that you enjoy to do, whether it's drawing, performing stand-up, whatever it may be, right? You enjoy doing it, so you're not exactly going to go over your level of enjoyment to achieve that thing. You're just going to do it to whatever level that you like to do it. So when he says I was busting my ass in the beginning, I'm not too sure. Again, this is Bert Kreischer, because again, read between lines of what he speaks about. He does obviously work hard in his marketing and get his brand out there, especially stand up now. But to say that you just weren't getting forward because you're not working hard in the beginning, I'm not too sure about that. I think a lot of people don't work hard. So let's say he did. But regardless, he now has the opportunity to do what he kind of wants with his career, and he's obviously widely successful. Numerous Netflix specials. He's obviously got his show now, The Cabin, on there on Netflix, and he's doing really well with his podcast. Like, everything's on the up and up for him. He's done some really cool live shows at the moment as well that have been going really well from the stuff I've seen online. But he's very aware that being friends with certain people within the scene, especially within the LA comedy scene, has definitely helped. Being part of the Comedy Store definitely helps. All these things, and I'm sure there are different things that happened that led up to those things kind of coming to fruition. And these are probably as important, or if not more important, than the actual work he does on the stage or working, in and around comedy. And it must get annoying when you're Bert Kreischer and you know that you're a good comedian, but you also know that you're only successful because of these other breaks that you got. To see someone like a Kevin Hart just say to people naively that you just have to work really hard. And I think he used an example of Jay Larson, somebody he really rates as in his kind of social circle. I think, he's got like, let's say 30,000 followers or 50,000 followers on Instagram, and Bert Kreischer's maybe on like, let's say 500,000 plus. And in his head, he thinks this guy's actually a better comic than me or the same level than me, but he's not as successful only because he doesn't have these other extra things that happen to him along the way, right? He doesn't have someone like a Joe Rogan telling him, or a Bill Burr telling him, hey, stop doing the flipping crappy TV show and just concentrate on your stand-up. He doesn't have somebody like a Joe Rogan who put him in his podcast. He doesn't have somebody that can maybe put him on a show or a manager or an agent. All these things that sort of contribute to it. And again, I don't think it's a bad thing for Kevin Hart to say these sort of messages, to put them out there. I think most of the time people don't work hard enough and they need to hear that message again and again. Work hard, because they just aren't going to do it. And I also think it's just an easier message to sort of get them through, the sort of the easier thing to lead with, to kind of get them in. And then they can start kind of figuring out what to kind of do in terms of maneuvering in industry and how to build a network and who to contact and where to go, all these sort of things. But I think if you bombard people with information, with that sort of information at the beginning, it's going to overwhelm them and they're not going to know what to do. But if you just tell them to work hard and they're actually passionate about what they want to do, they're going to work hard to get in. And then once they get in, they'll figure out, oh, okay, it's not just about doing a million shows, in a week. It's about where you do those shows, who you do them in front of, who you're doing them with, who's your community. I mean, there's all these other things that kind of play into the actual ability to become a next big stand-up star, or whatever it is in your other creative fields. But it's interesting because I think this is primarily one of the reasons why there's definitely a bit of friction or a bit of separation between the West Coast and East Coast comics, because I think, from my assumption, from what I've seen so far, again, I think it's helped with podcasts, because I think podcasts have maybe allowed most people to have an income, right? I think, but before podcasts, it did seem like the West Coast comics understood more this, the idea that it was about who that contributed, let's say 40% to your success, than the East Coast guys. The East Coast guys seem to like believe if they just did stand up enough times, that they would eventually become the next big star. And I guess because it worked like that in the yesteryears, but then it obviously changed with the internet. Things just moved in different ways, and the West Coast guys seem to kind of adapt a little bit quicker to that, which is why they all kind of appear on each other's podcasts. Of course, Joe Rogan's one being the biggest one, but that whole thing, and putting people on different spots, doing little shows, doing little tours, that actually helped them become bigger people, bigger stars, maybe than their actual talent level. So if you're an East Coast comic, you're like, hold on, I'm a better comedian than this guy. But of course, that guy's been able to figure out how to network, how to get he or she's name out there. And I guess now, again, we don't see much of a friction anymore, because I think podcasting has helped everyone be on a level playing field. Everyone can make an income. So I think you hear people complaining less. But when people weren't making money, when a lot of people weren't making money, and it was only the money was being held within the small segment of the community, it did feel like there was a lot of unnecessary tension, because there was this really naive idea that if you just work hard enough and you do enough jokes per day, per minute, wherever, maybe you're going to be successful. And I guess that it just isn't the case, and it just isn't the case. But again, interesting insight there from Bert. I would love to know your thoughts and opinions. Do you believe, Bert, do you think hard work is overrated? Or do you believe hard work is overrated, or do you believe Kevin Hart and you think hard work is usually the primary reason why somebody is successful or isn't successful? I'd love to know in the comments down below. Anyway, that is the Agostinho Zinga Show, episode number 405. Thanks so much for tuning in as per usual. It's been a pleasure to have your company. If it's your first time checking the show via YouTube, make sure you smash that like, hit subscribe, leave me a comment down below. If you're listening via the podcast app, please leave me a 5-star review and share the show with your friends. And of course, support via Patreon is always welcome. Patreon.com/Agostinho. That's Patreon.com/AGOSTINHO for more information regarding myself. And of course, access to my bonus episode every week available on Patreon only. Make sure you check out Patreon.com/Agostinho. $1, £1 only. Get involved, get signed up on there. And until next time, I'll see you guys again very, very soon. Take care, be safe, peace.